Queen Padmavati, who is considered the most beautiful woman of her time, is blissfully married to Rajput King Ratan Singh. When the greedy king of the Delhi Sultanate, Alauddin Khilji, hears about her unmatched beauty, he becomes obsessed with the idea of possessing her. In 13th century Afghanistan, Alauddin Khilji's followers wonder how he aims to capture Delhi and become the ruler of India when he's busy gorging on meat and being lazy. His nephew, Alauddin Khilji, makes a grand entrance with an ostrich by his side, as a gift for his beautiful daughter Marinissa, who had just asked for a feather. Alauddin is impressed by his dedication, and offers him a gift in return for this favor. Since Alauddin's aim in life is to own every precious thing in the world, he asks for Marinissa's hand in marriage. Lucky for him, she is impressed by the gesture, and agrees to marry him. Their wedding celebrations have begun, but the groom is missing, so Alauddin sends someone to look for him. He finds Alauddin in the arms of another woman, and asks him to have some shame on his wedding night. But he doesn't care, and stabs the man with a knife instantly. He comes out to join the others in the celebrations, even when news about what he did inside reaches Marinissa. For the first time, she is scared of Alauddin, because she knows he will go to any extent to possess any precious thing or person he sets his eyes on. At this point, he doesn't know that the most precious beauty in the world is thousands of miles across the ocean, the princess of Singhal, Padmavati. She's hunting a deer but keeps missing her target, till she finally knows she has hit something. It turns out to be a man, who claims she hit the right target after getting a good look at her and passing out. While she's helping people tend to his injuries, she learns that he's the Rajput king of Mewar from Chittor, Maharal Ratan Singh. Since he's their state guest, everyone is worried about him not reaching the palace after going out for a hunt. Padmavati asks Ratan to inform people that he is safe and resting. Ratan keeps getting flashbacks of his wife Negmati scolding him for giving away her precious pearl necklace as a reward to a local. She thinks she can't get it again, because the pearls are very rare and only found in Singhal. Ratan tries to wake up, but Padmavati insists that he needs rest. He can't get over how beautiful she is, and wants to learn more about her. Since he's there for the pearls, she insists that they can't be bought, and are only found by those who are lucky. Her father, King Ganarvsan, personally apologizes to Ratan for his daughter injuring him. But when he learns how humble Ratan is, and that he wants to spend time in the forest, and not the palace, he starts feeling like Ratan is family. Padmavati gives him the pearls he wanted, but injures him again, insisting that he can't leave just yet, since his wounds aren't healed. Ratan is already in love with her, and asks her to come to Mewat with him as his wife. With her father's blessings, they leave for Chittor, where Ratan grandly introduces her as Queen Padmavati, which his first wife isn't too happy about. As Chittor celebrates the new queen, Alauddin has invaded Delhi Sultanate and established the Khilji dynasty, making him the ruler of India. He knows they still face a looming threat from the Mongols, whose army is twice their size, but Alauddin knows determination is the most important thing to win the war, and asks for permission to lead the battle against them. Despite the minority in their numbers, Alauddin successfully defeats the Mongols, making a name for himself in the Delhi Sultanate. Padmavati has grown to love Chittor, and is eager to perform a special dance that is expected from the new queen. Ratan takes her to the temple, where she is introduced to his mentor Raghav Chetan, who notices how beautiful she is, but wants to quiz her on her intelligence. He is impressed by how well-educated, morally correct and accurate she is in her responses, and blesses her before she starts performing the dance Ghumar for Nagmati and the others. Rana feels very lucky to have her as his wife, and promises to fulfill all her wishes. She is satisfied just to be with him, but as they get closer, she feels like someone is watching them. Ratan suddenly throws his knife at the door, but doesn't find anyone when he goes to check. Padmavati notices blood on the knife, and comments on how it smells of sandalwood. As Raghav is playing his flute, Ratan's men bring him to the palace, where Ratan tries to take his advice on ways to punish someone who was spying on his wife in their private moments. He reveals the wound his dagger made on Raghav's chest, and decides to banish him to the dungeons. But Padmavati thinks it's better to banish him from the land itself. Before leaving, Raghav promises to burn down Ratan's kingdom as part of his revenge. Alauddin's relatives try to warn him about how greedy Alauddin is, since he's looting kingdoms without his permission, and bringing back precious items with him to his province of Kala, and not to Alauddin in Delhi. Alauddin only sees him as a tool for the Sultanate's success, but decides to head to Kala to claim the jewels Alauddin owes him. Alauddin is now trying to seduce the princess of Diagiri, who has become his conquest after he invaded Diagiri and took everything precious from them. Alauddin has reached Kala without notice, just like Alauddin wanted, and he warmly greets him. He claims he was keeping all the treasure safe for him, but Alauddin's focus is on the precious stone around his neck. He snatches it from his neck, since he thinks everything precious belongs to the emperor, but gives him a new slave in return for his services, Malik Kafur. Alauddin wants to test Malik's dedication towards him, and asks him to slay Alauddin's 2 ministers. While Alauddin thinks he's joking, Malik suddenly takes off his veil and swiftly murders both the ministers. Alauddin gets very excited about this and asks Ikhtiar to come forward, who stabs Alauddin in the back. Alauddin has returned to Delhi with Jalaluddin's head on a spike. His nephew Idat Khan thinks Alauddin is a traitor, but the court poet Amir Khusrau thinks history will remember this as the need of the hour. Alauddin insists that this needed to be done, since Delhi needs a fresh mind to rule it. He finally sits on the throne he has desired for a long time, amid cheers from his followers. Marinissa is trying to grieve her father when Alauddin enters the room in a celebratory mood, and shows her the jewel her father tried to take away from him. He asks her to be happy since she's now the Queen of India, and makes sure to treat her badly and force her to make love to him. But they're distracted by the sound of a flute, and Alauddin wants to meet the man who is playing it the next day. He is very impressed by Raghav's talent, and wants him to be a part of his court. But Raghav is more interested in his past, and guesses all things correctly. He claims that Alauddin is destined to rule the world, but only if he has the most beautiful woman by his side. As he describes Padmavati's beauty, Alauddin doesn't believe anyone like her can exist in real life. Raghav assures him that she is as precious as he claims, and if he finds a way to be with her, no one can stop him from becoming immortal. Alauddin sends a message inviting Ratan to Delhi with his family, to build ties and ensure the protection of his kingdom by the Delhi sultanate. Ratan rejects this offer and insists that he can take care of his people himself. When Alauddin hears about this rejection, he asks his troops to prepare for war. Marinissa thinks he should be ashamed of wasting his resources just to get close to a married woman. Alauddin has fought many wars, and he has no problem in fighting another one to capture the ultimate beauty. Padmavati hears a noise and follows Ratan to see Alauddin's army approaching them from a distance. Ratan starts preparing for war with his commander Gora Singh, and asks him to contact other Rajput kings for their support, since their army isn't large enough to beat Alauddin alone. Ratan stands with his troops to welcome the Khilji army with arrows, which stops them in their tracks. Despite Raghav's warning of how impossible it is to scale the walls of Chittor, his advisor Ulugh Khan decides to send some troops closer to the kingdom, who soon fall to their demise into the sand. Alauddin isn't happy with Raghav, and knows he will find a way around the walls, but if Padmavati isn't as beautiful as he claims, he threatens to slaughter him. Alauddin has set up camp outside Chittor, and Ratan knows it's a strategy to scare them. He asks Gora to make sure Chittor celebrates the festival of Diwali next week in such a grand way that Alauddin knows he can't break them. All of Chittor is lit up for Diwali, but Nagmati is sulking alone inside. She feels it's pointless to celebrate like this when the enemy is at their doorstep, but Padmavati thinks of them as guards, who can neither enter the premises nor leave it. Alauddin is ripping up pages of history that don't mention his name, and asks Ulugh to cut the supplies of food and water going to Chittor. He also wants a message delivered to all Rajput rulers to not side with Muad, unless they want to face his wrath. But his soldiers are getting restless as the days go by, so he decides to organize wrestling matches and other forms of entertainment. They've been away from Delhi for 2 months, but he is still determined. Because he feels every day takes him closer to Padmavati, he decides to enjoy this wait for her with patience. Ratan learns that no other Rajput king wants to support them, so they'll have to fight this battle themselves. He shoots a single arrow with fire as a warning near Alauddin's tent, followed by many more arrows that burn a lot of tents all around. Malik asks for Alauddin's help, but his sleep is more important, and the lives of his pet birds. His army is on the verge of mutiny after losing their camps and supplies, so Alauddin comes out to address them. He asks Malik to bring their flag, and reminds the army of the dream they saw together, of the Khilji flag ruling the world, and is shocked they want to give up so soon. When he asks them to forget the dream and drops the flag, everyone is motivated to save it again. A few months later, Chittor is celebrating Holi when Gora reminds Ratan that only a few days of food supplies are left. Ratan doesn't want his people to panic, but is sure Alauddin will retreat soon, since they won't be able to handle the hot weather. When Gora insists the situation is very serious, Ratan reminds him that he's a true Rajput, who will fight for his people till his last breath. Alauddin knows the weather is too brutal for the army, and before it gets worse, he asks Malik to send a message of truce to the Rajputs, since he wants to play Holi with them. Padmavati is excited about her first Holi with Ratan, and they only have love in their eyes for each other. Malik reaches Ratan and reads out a message by Alauddin praising him for his Rajput might, and asks for an experience of his hospitality before he heads back to Delhi with his army. Padmavati thinks it could be a conspiracy, but Ratan isn't worried, since he has kept 2 conditions he doesn't think Alauddin will agree to. He has asked Alauddin to send his army back to Delhi, and only come to the fort alone and unarmed. Padmavati is sure that someone who has waited 6 months patiently to make a move will surely accept these demands, which he easily does. Alauddin is preparing to send his army far enough from Chittor's eyes so they assume they're back in Delhi. Nothing can stop his enthusiasm, since he feels he's getting much closer to Padmavati. As Malik informs him about rumors of Idat eyeing his throne, Alauddin gets angry, since he doesn't think anyone apart from him is capable of managing that throne. He gets easy entry into the fort alone, and is very excited when he finally meets Ratan. He offers his sword to him and asks to be treated like a friend. They have spent the whole day together, but Alauddin is distracted, looking around the palace and asks to meet Ratan's family. When he specifically mentions his intention of meeting Padmavati, all swords come out around his neck. But Ratan can't behead him for his indecent request, since the Rajputs always treat their guests with honor. Padmavati has decided to show her face to Alauddin to prevent a war, but Ratan is angry with this decision. She wants to perform her duty as the queen, but Ratan has sworn to protect her and his people at any cost. Alauddin is told Ratan will help him meet Padmavati, but when he comes, Alauddin only gets a minor glimpse of her from a huge distance, with smoke hiding her face. When the curtains fall back soon, Alauddin asks Ratan to join him for a meal at his camp before he leaves for Delhi. Padmavati is afraid of him venturing out alone during a storm, but Ratan is too proud to think he can reject this offer. With a few soldiers behind him, Ratan enters Alauddin's tent unarmed and alone. Alauddin recalls everything he has lost since he started camping in Chittor, and declares that he intends to take Ratan back to Delhi with him. Ratan knows he shouldn't have expected Alauddin to have the basic decency of not kidnapping an unarmed guest, but Alauddin is proud of his strategies, and explains that he's forced to take him, since he didn't honor their deal of showing him Padmavati's face properly. Kidnapping him is the only way of getting Padmavati to Delhi to free him. He also shows Ratan that Raghav has been involved in his plan all along. Kanwar Besa asks Padmavati to wait in the palace for her safety during the storm, but she's determined to stay there till Ratan comes back. Gora gets suspicious about Ratan missing for so long, and decides to enter the tent, which is empty since Alauddin's men took him away from the other direction in the storm. Raghav meets Gora there and delivers the message of asking Padmavati to come to Delhi if she wants her husband to be safe. Nagmati has called for a meeting where she doesn't want to see Padmavati's face, since she blames her beauty for all their troubles. She thinks Padmavati should be punished for putting Ratan in danger, but Padmavati wonders why it's her fault, when the person who has the evil gaze should be blamed more. Nagmati wants Padmavati to travel to Delhi to bring Ratan back, but all the other women protest against it. They think it would be insulting to let the queen step out of the premises without the king like this. Padmavati walks up to Nagmati and promises to go to Delhi so she can bring Ratan back, just like the goddesses had to come to earth to defeat the devil. She knows how strong Rajput women are, and knows she can pull this off. Ratan is alone in his cell when Raghav starts playing the flute, and teases him about bowing down to Alauddin. Gora is offended that Padmavati has decided to go to Delhi herself, when they have a whole army of protectors willing to sacrifice their swords to bring their ruler back. She insists that all wars can't be won by swords, and some need strategies, and commands him as his queen to follow her rules. Alauddin gets a message from Padmavati, who has agreed to come with 800 women, if she can get permission to meet Ratan before she meets Alauddin. He happily agrees to her conditions, including the last one, in which she demands Raghav's head. Gora shows her the head and apologizes for doubting her, since she managed to murder an enemy on the other side just like that, and promises to listen to all her commands. She asks him to prepare for their departure, since she's eager to meet Ratan. As Padmavati moves towards Delhi, Alauddin is celebrating his victory with some poetry, and feels like he's in love. When Idat doesn't claim to understand it, he calls him a coward. This offends him, and as they all celebrate Padmavati's impending arrival, he plans for ways in which he can take over the throne. Alauddin celebrates the night with music and dance, but towards the end, some poisonous arrows bring him to the ground. He's breathing but severely injured, with Malik tending to him. Idat approaches an unconscious Alauddin, to whisper in his ears that he finally took revenge for him slaying Jalaluddin. Alauddin suddenly gains consciousness and strangles Idat with one hand. Padmavati wants to reach their kingdom at a time when everyone is praying, so it will be easier to meet Ratan. Malik shares the exciting news of Padmavati's arrival the next morning, but he's not in the condition to receive her personally, so Mehrunissa offers to do it on his behalf, as the queen. Alauddin likes the idea, since he doesn't want any man to be near Padmavati. When Padmavati arrives, Mehrunissa finally understands why everyone is crazy about her beauty. Padmavati doesn't care about how she looks, and feels Alauddin is at fault for trying to break her home. She reminds Mehrunissa about their agreement, according to which she is allowed to meet Ratan first, with Gora and Sujan Singh. As Mehrunissa directs her towards where Ratan is being held captive, Alauddin eagerly waits in pain for the love of his life to turn up. She calls out to Ratan in his cell, but instead of being happy, he gets angry about her coming there to rescue him. She assures him that she has no intention of bowing down before Alauddin, and asks Mehrunissa to set him free. Mehrunissa sends the only other guard there to inform Alauddin that she's bringing Padmavati to him. But when they're alone, she quietly whispers to Padmavati about her plan of helping them sneak out of the premises unnoticed. Padmavati doesn't understand why she's helping them, but Mehrunissa is doing this for selfish reasons, since she doesn't want her husband to commit the crime of stealing someone else's wife. Padmavati is on board with the plan, but Ratan refuses to leave without meeting Alauddin once. His principles are more important than anything else, and even if it's risky, he can't sneak out of enemy lair due to his pride. Ratan goes to meet the injured Alauddin, who is waiting alone for Padmavati, and announces that he's taking his wife to safety right from under his nose. He also declares that he has no intention of murdering Alauddin now, since Rajputs don't attack injured people, and asks him to prepare for battle whenever he's in a condition to fight. As he tries to leave quickly with Padmavati, thanks to Marinus's help, Gora wants to stay behind to fight the enemy, after dropping them off safely to give them a clear passage. When word of this enemy breach reaches the Khilji army, they set out to stop the Rajputs. The women Padmavati claimed to have brought with her turn out to be men of the army, who start fighting the Khiljis. Padmavati thanks Marinissa in her gestures, before finally leaving her and running away to safety with Ratan. Malik informs Alauddin about Marinissa's betrayal, which makes Alauddin feel like love is not in his destiny. The Rajputs fight bravely, but since they're clearly outnumbered and the Khiljis don't follow rules of the war, Gora is attacked from behind and loses his life on the battlefield. Alauddin has summoned Marinissa to decide her punishment, and feels hurt that those closest to him, like Idad and her, have hurt him the most. He's very angry with her, but also loves her, so he chooses to banish her to the dungeons forever, before he attacks her in his rage. Before leaving, Marinissa wishes that she wants all his dreams to come true, except getting Padmavati. Ratan and Padmavati reach Chittor, amid cheers about Padmavati's bravery. She is even compared to the legend of Savitri, a woman who got her husband back from the edge of the afterlife. But Ratan feels that instead of celebrating, they should mourn the loss of brave martyrs like Gora and Battle, who fought till the very end for Chittor, and should always be remembered for their sacrifice. Padmavati meets Kunwar Besa and apologizes for not being able to save her son Battle. Kunwar has no regrets, and is in fact proud that her son perished on the battlefield like a hero. Alauddin is heading for Chittor again, with a bigger army and mightier weapons, and has decided that he'll only give them one day to let Padmavati come to him, otherwise he'll attack and burn down the whole place. Nagmati informs Padmavati about their arrival, and once again feels like it's her fault Alauddin is back. As she heads out to check, along with everyone else, the Khilji army has reached their borders, and they send a message that lands right next to Padmavati, who burns it after reading it. Alauddin is getting anxious about not receiving a reply from them, and wishes to wait outside in the sun, since he doesn't want to miss the opportunity of watching Padmavati coming out to meet him. The Rajputs in turn are preparing for battle, but Padmavati seems very scared. Ratan loves how the sword looks on her, but she knows this war might not work out in their favor, since they are outnumbered. She asks him for a favor, and demands the right to perform Jauhar if he loses his life in the battlefield. For Jauhar, women fire after their husband's demise. As Alauddin waits for her all night, Padmavati and Ratan spend it together preparing for the next day. While he's ready for battle, she's dressed up as a bride, to be with him on that important day. When Alauddin realizes they are not sending Padmavati, he asks his men to fire at them. They bring out dangerous weapons that intimidate the Rajputs. With these fireballs, the Khilji army manages to break many walls and parts of the building. Hearing the noise, Ratan knows it's time for him to step out in the field. Malik wonders if they should try attacking them in the fort, but Alauddin is sure they'll come down. When both the armies are ready on the battlefield and facing each other, Ratan decides to head towards them alone, since he feels this is his fight with Alauddin. Malik wants to intercept him, but Alauddin is happy to fight this battle with Ratan alone. They bring out their swords and shields and start fighting each other. Inside the walls, Padmavati addresses all the women, and discusses how all the soldiers fighting to protect them outside these walls are nothing less than gods for them. She reminds them how important principles are for Rajputs, and how brave they are on the battlefield, always fighting with conviction. In Ratan and Alauddin's battle, he manages to dismantle Alauddin's crown, making Malik react. People warn Malik that attacking Ratan is against the rules, but he doesn't care when it comes to Alauddin's life. Ratan fights bravely, and is even able to disarm Alauddin in the process. He has the upper hand, but when he moves forward to charge at him, Alauddin's army attacks him from behind with arrows. He keeps trying to somehow hurt Alauddin till his last breath, and comments on how he should have at least followed the rules in this battle. Since the only rule for Alauddin in a battle is winning it, Ratan falls to his end, and the angry Rajputs start charging towards the army. In her speech, Padmavati adds that while the men are fighting on the battlefield, the women will also contribute to the war in a way that hasn't been seen before in Chittor. She wants all the ladies to join her in performing Jauhar, their bodies to the same front of which they got married. She thinks that for Alauddin and his men, who are lusting over their bodies, this will be the greatest defeat, since even if their husbands perish in battle, the army will never be able to capture the women like they intend to. When she is informed about Ratan's demise, she asks the soldiers to shut the gates of the fort and to prepare for the fire, where they'll for their husbands. She thinks this will make them immortal in history, since the enemy will never be able to touch them. As Alauddin makes his way towards the fort and tries to open the gates, the women in their wedding attire start preparing for Jauhar. Alauddin manages to breach the gates, but when he enters the second one, he's met by hostile women, who start throwing coal at him and his army. Alauddin asks his army to attack, but the women start a fire in front of him. He tries to take a separate route, but Padmavati is almost ready to body to the She leads all the women for Jauhar, and even those women who are pregnant, and with kids, walk towards the fire with pride. Alauddin even manages to catch up to them, but the women shut the doors on him as Padmavati steps into the marking Alauddin's greatest defeat and Chittor's greatest victory, even after centuries.